Oh, hey, folks. Just so you know, Rob Rousseau is monitoring everything that's happening, and we got in trouble for having a quiet space for a while. But I wanted to thank Nora Loretto for coming and guesting with the great Hillary Agro. Hillary's show Bread and Poppies is available at the Harbinger Media Network. Nora Loretto's new show, based on her book Take Back the Fight, is dropping with Harbinger at the beginning of October. We're super excited about that. I'm Harbinger Executive Director Andre Goulet. I'm coming back in about an hour with the Broadbent Institute's Executive Director Jen Hassam and Ricochet French's Gabrielle Brassal-Lecoul and some other guests to talk about Canadian left media. But now I'm super excited because one of my absolute favorite shows is doing a live recording featuring one of the dark horse candidates, not in the federal election, but in another election coming up soon. That's right. I'm talking about the Alberta Senate elections. So I'm going to pass it off to Jeremy Appel, Roberta Lexier, and Mo Cranker, welcoming Mr. Duncan Kinney. Nahum, you can take me out. I'm going to hang up.
Welcome to our first ever live recording of the Forgotten Corner. I am your co-host, Jeremy Appel. I'd normally be joined here by my co-host and good friend, Scott Schmidt, but he's unfortunately had a family emergency and couldn't be here. But I am joined by my sometimes co-host and always good friend, Roberta Lexier.
Well, hello there.
And as well as our producer and good buddy, Mo Cranker.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hey, Mo.
Roberta.
Roberta, how's it going? How's it going? I mean, we both live in Calgary, so everything's going great here, right?
Yeah, it's really good. I asked people, do you want the real answer or should I just say I'm fine? Because things are not so pretty good these days in Alberta, and it's kind of hard to figure out how to deal with all this. I don't know, unnecessary death and horrifying death cult around us. I don't know. It's great. Good times.
as good as possible given the circumstances is what I try to say.
Hey, you shut your mouth till we introduce you.
I'm jumping right in. This is a conversation, man.
Yeah, but Mo, how are you doing?
Things are good. I'm not a professor at a university, so my life, I'm not going to complain. Things are pretty decent in my little part of the world.
You're a humble podcast producer, so
I should say that things are way worse for way more people than me. I am not in the worst position here by far. I'm healthy, I'm safe, all that. But I find it's just really hard getting up every morning and facing this horrifying world around us and just what we've let happen here, like we've let our leaders, in quotation marks, abandon us, and it's just fascinating. Anyway, let's turn this over to our actual conversation.
Well, but I just want to say that throughout the pandemic, I think a lot of people can relate to this. There's been I felt this dichotomy between how the world around me is doing and then how I'm doing personally, which ebbs and flows like anyone. But we're all, we have it pretty good, like as individuals relative to other people. Anyways, on with the show. Our guest today is running for the Canadian Senate. For those outside of Alberta, yes, we have Senate elections here. Duncan Kinney is running in them to prove a point. Alberta's elections for an appointed position that should be abolished are a farce. You may know him as the host of fellow Harbinger podcast, The Progress Report, as well as being the editor of an Edmonton-based news outlet of the same name, or for his service in the posting wars. Fun little bit of trivia. The Progress Report episode, The Newsboys, was mine and Scott's first ever podcast appearance. So if you like our podcast, you kind of owe it to Duncan. Finally, joining us on the Forgotten Corner, Duncan Kinney. Duncan, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I feel honored to have introduced Jeremy to the sacred art of podcasting. So yes,
you created a monster.
Mhm.
I am Frankenstein. Wait,
Everyone
you've
will
done
be a
the world a
podcaster.
service.
You're Frankenstein because you created me.
There you go.
The
Yes,
doctor
I
is
always get.
Frankenstein.
I always fuck that up too.
Yeah. So I'm the monster. And you're okay. Anyways, let's get this show on the road, shall we? Duncan, you've listened to the podcasts before, presumably.
Big fan of the Forgotten Corner and all of my fellow podcasts on the Harbinger Media Network. I mean, after all, part of why we're here is because of Harbinger. They've brought us together. We get to have, like a Slack channel and shit. I mean, I talk to Jeremy all the time anyways, but
yeah, full disclosure, he pays me sometimes to write for
yes,
the progress report.
Jeremy Appel is a progress report contributor and sometimes freelancer.
Yeah,
which has been a real pleasure. I have if you weren't so busy, I'm working on this like bonkers story, kind of like the stuff we worked on before, like Mana Talk and Razor and like shit like that.
Well, if you want me to collab, holler at me. I
hit my line. Yes.
Well, in the next month, after the next month, I am going to be looking for some work. But anyways, not about me. It's about the man of the hour.
And it's not even about me. Come on, let's. I think they wanted us to patter for a little while, right? About Harbinger and giving to Harbinger. So
yeah, obviously, it goes without saying, this is the Harbinger Telethon. This is
the Harbinger Telethon,
the Canadian Left podcasting event of the year. All the stars are out. Did any of you catch Hillary and Nora? Just
caught a little bit of it. Yes, setting my computer up.
Yeah, I caught a bit of it, but yeah, always great to hear from both of them.
Yes, both extremely dope people.
I don't even know how Twitch works, so I'm just here hoping this actually is a thing because I'm old and I don't know what these things are. So this is really exciting, a debut on Twitch, but I'm also a board member of the Harbinger Media board, and so I do want to give that big plug to Harbinger. Make sure you go join the network. You get all these great podcasts like Forgotten Corner and the many others you're going to see that today, and it's going to be really great, and hopefully we don't mess up this Twitch thing too badly, or a live recording, which is really terrifying given how much we sort of ramble and how much work Mo usually does afterwards to make it.
Yeah, that was daunting for me too. I was talking to Rob Rousseau yesterday, and I was just like, I don't know, like I value having an editor a lot, right? It takes the pressure off you. He's like, it's live, anything can happen. I was like, you know what, that's spirit, anything can happen. So
who's got the sirens?
Yeah, like siren on I live on like a major street in Calgary, so whenever I record there are always sirens going off, and I mean usually I mute my mic, but we're live, we're on Twitch.
We'll do it live.
Yeah, exactly. As the great man Bill O'Reilly once said. Great man of history. So Duncan, as you know, as a diligent listener, every episode we're an interview show, in case you haven't listened before. And so every episode we start, if it's a guest we haven't had on before, just asking the guest for their life story. So tell us, Duncan, what's your origin story? How do you come to, I mean, maybe not be a Senate candidate, because we'll get more into that in a bit, but like, who are you? Who is the real Duncan Kinney, right? Like, we all know you from Twitter. And
it starts on my birthday.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I was born in Edmonton. I was raised in Calgary. Fun fact though, I never lived in Edmonton until I was in my 20s. But no, my parents lived in Drayton Valley, and my dad was working for, I think, Hudson's Bay Oil and Gas. If not Hudson's Bay, then Dome. And then my mom was pregnant in Drayton Valley. I was a difficult birth, and so they had to drive me into Edmonton. And I was born in Edmonton General, which is not even a hospital anymore. It's like a continuing care facility, and it's not very far from where I work. It's about 6 or 7 blocks away. But I grew up in Calgary my whole life. My mom and dad, or my dad was in oil and gas. My mom joined oil and gas when I was in my teens or early 20s. Yeah. Don't ask me about the specific timelines, but yeah, it's Alberta boy. And that's how I come to you right now. Been running the Progress Report, Progress Alberta, for 5 years, since 2016, January 2016. And independent journalist. We don't really do campaigning or advocacy anymore. We've stepped way back from that, and it's just independent journalism, the Progress Report. And we ask people for money. Sometimes they give it to us, and it's enough to do the job.
So how does an Alberta boy, born and bred, kid of oil and gas workers, end up being, shit poster extraordinaire Duncan Kinney? How do you get from that history to who you are now?
That's an interesting question. I think Why I Hate Canadians is an interesting kind of starting point. If anyone has read that book, by what the fuck is his name? Ferguson. This is a good kind of pop history of Canada, kind of acknowledged some the real history of Canada in a relatively amusing manner. I'm more of a fan of Ferguson's nonfiction than his fiction, but is
that's Will Ferguson?
Yeah, that guy.
Oh yeah, I have one of his books on this shelf. I haven't read it.
I believe
it may surprise you, Roberta, but I have a book on my shelf that I haven't read.
Only one.
That's the only one. I've read them all.
Only one.
Yeah.
Which
That's
book
the
by Will
next book
Ferguson?
club episode.
419? 14.
Oh, the Nigerian murder mystery one. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, that's I like his nonfiction stuff. I grew up reading it. His Bastards Are Boneheads is like pretty good, kind of Canadian political history as well. And is just kind of like a backbone of kind of information about how it went down. I read the newspapers growing up. I was like always an annoying kid. I'm the oldest of 6. My parents had a lot of children, and it was a relatively like healthy family. Nothing too kind of much to complain about my middle class to upper middle class lifestyle. Went to Mount Royal University to get my journalism degree.
Oh, hey,
I'm a grad.
I've heard
it was college at the time. I don't even have like a real bachelor's. This is in the transition times. Like I have a degree you can't even get anymore. It's like a bachelor's of applied communications or an applied bachelor, one of those things. I'd have to pull out the whatever, but it's like, it's not a real bachelor. It's great.
Fake bachelor.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're a fake bachelor. What does that mean? Like you're married, or I don't get it. It's funny.
Yeah.
But shout out to Mount Royal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I guess we haven't. Roberta is, of course. Well, you did say you're a professor, but you didn't say where. It's at Mount Royal University, which is also where a certain Calgary mayor we've had on the podcast before taught before he was mayor. And Duncan, I believe you went to J school with a couple people that we
that
know
exist.
Yeah, my soon-to-be former boss, but friend, Jeremy Clauses was in your class, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Jeremy Clauses and he was like a year or two ahead of me. He was he was also the news editor at the Reflector, which I was as well for a year. And who else went? Was in it? Jeremy Nolis, the chief of staff.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's some deep trivia there. He's this like NDP Twitter guy. He's like whatever, but
he's like the chief of staff for the official opposition.
Well, I just know him on Twitter, but also who will be joining me on the other podcast in less than a couple hours. Stephen Maguziak from Press Progress, I believe, also went to school with you.
Yeah, Maguziak was a grad with me same year, I think. If not same year, maybe a year ahead of me. Yeah, I think he was a year ahead of me too. But yeah, definitely there at the same time, hung out, drunk beers. Jeremy, I didn't really hang out, drank beers with. Definitely drank a lot of beer with Steve and Jeremy, a bunch of other people. But yeah, it was college. And but don't go to J school. Actually, J school's bad.
Well, I mean, post-secondary is a scam. Sorry, Roberta, but
She's not a journalism professor. She's her hands are clean. She's not a journalism professor.
Yeah, but higher education is fake. Just listen to podcasts. That's my advice.
I might not go that far, but I would say there's definite problems with post-secondary education.
But what was I gonna say? Shit. We're live.
Well, I moved. You still want to be talking about Mount Royal? There's a lot that happened at Mount Royal. It was fun. The Reflector was fun. It was, it's college. It was foundational. You learn about journalism. You run a little newspaper for a year called the Journal.
The Calgary Journal.
Yeah,
pretty good from my
yeah. It's not bad. And you do broadcast stuff too. And I was editing video there. I was on CTV National for a video bit when I was a second year.
Oh man!
I think I said I was voting. That'd be some trivia to track down. I think I said I was vote green. I interviewed who was that lady? Deb Gray. I think Deb Gray. Whatever. Some scion of the Reform Party. I interviewed, and then I just ended up interviewing Juliette Burgess, who's actually still on Twitter, I think, and she was a federal Green Party candidate, and I voted for her. I don't even remember who the orange person was or the liberal. But yeah,
they all serve the interests of capital.
They all serve the interests of capital. Electoralism is a dead end of your time and energy. But
yeah, well, my generation knows it better than anyone's.
Except in this Senate election, because we need people to get.
Yeah, that is one
very
the only election where your vote matters is Alberta Senate election, which we'll get to briefly. But
what a transition! No, you got to let me give my pitch after that transition. That was
okay. Let's do it. Let's talk, and then we can
zip back and forth. But
whatever. This isn't just your regular Forgotten Corner episode.
The Senate election is gold because it's the political stakes could not be lower, right? The political stakes are on the floor. When it comes to
sell yourself short.
No, just the
stakes couldn't be higher.
But the comedy stakes are immense, especially when compared to the political stakes, right? So it's you have to get into it just because of the differential between the comedy and the actual, because politically, who cares? We don't elect senators. The Senate election is fake. The whole campaign is just me saying the Senate election is fake over and over again, or Jason Kinney is a dick and hates you. Vote for me to spite him. Those are my 2 sentences that you have to say when talking about this election. It is easy to stay on message. It is stupid and fun, and we can kind of come back to it over the course of the chat. But it's yes, everything I've done has led me to the point where I would engage in a fake run for a fake position and still somehow be the candidate telling the most truth and being the most credible about what's at stake.
Yeah, well, that's not a high bar to reach. But I want to talk a bit about your advocacy work with Progress Alberta, right, which was founded in 2016. So just the year before, the NDP had this surprise majority government victory in the unlikeliest of places. Where were you on provincial election night 2015, Duncan?
I was at a friend's house. It wasn't anything wild.
But what was your did you think the NDP could do it?
I was a beaten down dog, and I didn't think it was going to happen until it happened. I had to see the actual votes. So yeah, I didn't work on the campaign. I wasn't close to the Alberta NDP at all. So it was I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have access to the information they did. And they fucking ran away with it. It was wild.
I remember that night really, really well, actually, because I was in Ottawa with a colleague at a conference there, and we were in the bar of the hotel just watching the results in kind of shock. And everybody else there was from Ontario, and they were all yeah, so they just really didn't get how big a deal that was. I mean, obviously a limited big deal, because as we talked about, electoralism's limited and all that sort of stuff. And we have talked many times about the problems with the provincial NDP here, but it was a big deal. It was a big change. I think it opened people's eyes to what could be possible in this province. So I remember really strangely clearly where I was, and it's very weird.
What about you, Mo? Do you like? Were you following
Was
those
Mo
sorts
out
of
of
things?
diapers yet?
Tangent. Yeah, just for the
Do you
record,
remember that election?
Mo is the baby of this podcast. I think he was born in like 1999.
Stop.
No, I always take piss out Mo. He was born in 94, right?
Yeah.
94. So he's pretty young, but like were you like, was this something that was on your radar in 2015?
The provincial election in Alberta? No. You remember when we were at the news and I didn't even know who Nenshi was?
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up, but I'm glad you did. So Mo's come a long way from not knowing who Naheed Nenshi was while living in Alberta in 2017 to being a podcast producer who
we need to do a Mo episode. I'm like now just all over this. We need to figure out how Mo has become part of this. It's amazing, this journey.
Well, I don't want to take full credit,
Scott and
but
Jeremy.
yeah, I'm going to take credit here.
Well, you and Scott, I would imagine. Let's give Scott some.
Yeah, I will Scott whatever, but
he's not here. Who cares?
Yeah, he's not here. He can't defend himself. No, but I remember following it in, my parents. I was living with my parents at the time in the GTA suburbs. And I remember, following it tangentially. I know, like, I remembered when most of the Wildrobes Caucus, sort of this populist right-wing movement that solidified into a political party, crossed the floor to the PCs. They got cupped by the governing party. And I remember finding that really interesting. And then selection took place, I believe it was a few years later, a couple of years later, year later.
Time has not much meaning these days. I don't know.
Yeah, well, but
that was
anyways,
Danielle
there's
Smith era. If anybody's interested in her journey to her
oh yeah,
being
well,
canceled,
yeah,
supposedly.
we could talk about Danielle Smith.
Big fan of Danielle Smith's cancellation. That really worked really well.
Yeah, I haven't heard a thing from her.
Since yesterday, maybe it's been a whole week. I don't know.
Yeah, but anyways,
yeah,
and I just remember just following this election tangentially and being like, oh, the NDP are like doing well in the polls. I wonder if they'll become official opposition or they'll have a minority government with the PCs, and then they won a majority. And I thought that was pretty cool. But then I found out what the Alberta NDP think about the tar sands, and I was like, oh yeah, makes sense. But Duncan, so this election happens, you start Progress Alberta the next year. First thing, tell us a bit about what Progress Alberta is. And secondly, what was the connection between having a progressive, for all its flaws, Alberta government for the first time in our lifetimes, and how that may have or hasn't played a role in the formation of Progress Alberta?
Yeah, it started out as a way to kind of both think about what we wanted out of the government, as well as how to achieve it. It was independent journalism and investigative stuff, but also kind of campaigning and advocacy and trying to figure out how power works and how to get stuff done, as well as recruiting the people who can do this stuff. And we did some fun shit early on in Progress Alberta's days. We tracked down how much money was coming from the Alberta, is really across Canada, but mostly from Alberta. 80% of it was from Alberta into Saskatchewan politics, because they just had Wild West election finance laws, and anybody from across Canada could donate to a Saskatchewan political party. And Brad Wall was raising so much money from Alberta corporations, mostly oil and gas. And yeah, we dug that up and we made that information public, just like in a spreadsheet. And it was a huge story in Saskatchewan for a while. And we've done a couple of really big deep dives on private schools and private schooling, and kind of how it's paid for, who gets the money, what are the conditions of those schools, how this whole kind of rotten arrangement worked. Yeah, we would like raise money from like QP or like a large union or a couple of large unions and do work like that. And we also ran like we still have the stickers. We ran like a Stop Kenny like texting campaign during the 2019 election, where we like texted voters in Calgary, asked them a few questions, and like told them based on how they answer those questions, we're like, oh, look, if you want to stop Kenny, you gotta vote for Rachel Notley, unfortunately, and her team. And we did shit like that. And yes, I mean, it did not. The NDP got wiped in 2019, absolutely wiped, especially in Calgary,
where we not in Edmonton though. So get credit where credit's due.
Mm-hmm.
You are based in Edmonton.
Edmonton was rock solid. Yes, I live. Who is my MLA? Janice Irwin is my MLA. So yeah,
the good one. Well, there are a few good ones. We've interviewed 2 of them on the podcast, both of them, rather. But yeah, but so what was there any relation between the NDP victory in 2015 and your starting Progress Alberta? Was it sort of an initiative to maybe like put pressure on the NDP from the left, or were you going to start it regardless of?
Yeah, like it was
what happened the year before.
It was a lot of things. Like there was just a sense of excitement in Alberta, and like there was the sense that anything was possible in those like early days, right? And the agenda was still being set. Like the first 18 months of a provincial government is really kind of like when all the stuff they want to do is set into motion. And they were like reacting to events. They had, I can't remember the timeline on the fire, but it was a hopeful time still, I think, in January, like because I was talking to people and pulling together the money for it and stuff in late 2016 or 2015, sorry, and got started January 2016. So yeah, those were heady times. This was before my kid. Like my brain is a lot different. It's weird thinking that Progress Alberta is 5 years old. Wow.
Yeah, time has weird movement anyway, and then also add in a pandemic, and it's just a disaster to try and remember when things happened or what was going on. I'm really intrigued, Duncan, about your kind of relationship between journalism and activism, and sort of how you see that relationship and where you see the role of Progress, but also just in general, what role journalists might play in the broader political discussions that we're having, and advocacy specifically.
Yeah, the interface between journalism and activism and power and organizing is an interesting one, because journalists typically like aren't very good organizers. Like they have certain other skills
or people.
Yeah. But like journalists, do provide like an objective good that society requires. You need people who are paying attention to shit, paying attention to the people who make decisions. And like it's just kind of a necessary thing that has to happen. Information has to be distributed. It has to come from a somewhat independent source that's at least kind of making some kind of judgment call, right, about what you need to see and understand. And that's always going to get filtered through ideology and how things like actually work, and like how power actually works. And there's a reason, I guess, why so many journalists end up as politicians, right? Is like people just like end up knowing who you are, like for whatever reason, through the stories and content that you produce, and they think like, oh yeah, like if I'm going to vote for anyone, I'll vote for someone who I kind of have read a story by once. And here we are. But the journalism and activism it's always a tricky question, right? Like activism is even somewhat of a pejorative, and because I mean, we don't have to have that discussion, but like,
No. I think this is the perfect place to have that discussion because there is this notion, and we've talked about this for Duncan, but that journalism and political activism are mutually exclusive, and being one necessarily damages your credibility as the other. And I'm just wondering how you respond to that.
yeah, I mean, the organization itself, Progress Report, has never like had to file a substantial apology or correction in five years. Like, yeah, the organization has been rock solid on all its stories and reporting. We take a data-driven approach. We like some of this stuff is just like going through publicly available documents, like the Blue Book and like the information that's on Elections Alberta and their contributor database. And there's a variety of other publicly available databases that let you know how stuff works. Like you and I have gone through a lot of like corporate reports and annual reports and shit like that to understand that like corporations really run this place. Oh man, I have a story I'm working on that'll like just blow your hair back once it comes out. It's so rotten. but anyways,
There's a lot. I mean, the thing about Alberta being a journalist here is there's just a never ending supply of muck to rake. Like it's just so deeply embedded in our political culture that like these are like the sorts of investigations I've done for you about like oil and gas companies, like Brett Wilson, the chief corporate welfare bum in Alberta, just dumping all these orphan wells for the public to clean up. I mean, everyone knows this shit happens. It's just they think nothing of it.
Yeah, like if there is a story that kind of defines the Progress Report's approach to journalism, I think your Brett Wilson profile shows that off quite well. And if you haven't read it, I would recommend it. And it is a very clear and well written, and again, all the facts are sound. we don't say shit that's untrue. Where it's like, this is how many wells and how many pipelines, this is how much it's supposed to have cost, this is how much money he still owed to fucking everyone. Just a huge fucking deadbeat. Just declare bankruptcy, like pull the chute and fucking just vanish.
Yeah, and we tracked down a rancher whose land that well was on, which was the huge pain in the ass to do. But I got this map of like rural areas in Alberta, and I tracked this guy down. And what did he say? He's just like, it's a fucking pain in the ass, or something. It was a very colorful quote. But I wanted so. Progress Alberta, which did some journalism, did some advocacy, and then you created the Progress Report. So tell me a bit about that. Like, because Progress Alberta is still an entity, right?
The Progress Report has always been around. It's been around since day one of Progress Alberta. It's the newsletter. So the email newsletter has existed, and we're coming up on like 300. I think we're in the 290s. We put out 300 weekly newsletters on Alberta politics and social movements since 2016. And
written by Jim Story.
Yeah, written by me. I wrote for the first few years, and then Jim has taken over.
Yeah. It's a good newsletter for those of you interested in Alberta politics. It's definitely a must subscribe.
Yeah, and like email lists and like, people who actively subscribe to your shit are important. It's a way to like show that people listen to you and that people care. So if you do like what we do, subscribe to the email newsletter. Jim writes it. It's really good. I do recommend it. Helps you. You don't have to keep track of all this shit. Like we live, you and I and Jeremy and Roberta, like we live in a pretty information dense, information rich situation. And not everyone needs to endure the like psychic trauma. Like once a week, you should pop in, let someone kind of like explain what happened, what's going on, where the important bits are, and live your life and be hopefully a normal person. Because living like I do and like most journalists do is very annoying.
It's
Don't
Yeah,
let
it can be.
exhausting.
It can.
I
Yeah,
find.
exactly. It's a bit taxing. Oh, hi. This is Gotham.
Hello,
My
hi,
cat.
Gotham.
I knew he would come say hello because
Because we're live.
Aw, kitty
yeah,
visit.
and whenever I'm recording a podcast, he loves to jump on me.
Well, of course, you're doing something that's not
He's
paying
my
attention.
he's my son. I love him. Now, anyways, back to our regularly scheduled
So Duncan,
programming.
I'm intrigued how you then choose the kinds of topics and stories that you dig up, because listening to you, you sound very much like an academic, where it's like, I want to look through this realm, like this big stack of paper, and see what kind of fun things I can find out, and then we'll go from there. And I can totally understand that. But on the other side, there seems to be sort of a like a driving purpose to what you're trying to accomplish with that digging. And so I'm intrigued, like, what's your big goal in all of this, do you find, when you're thinking about what stories to do or take on, or what which books to start digging through, or corporate documents to do?
Yeah, like it's about holding powerful people to account, right? And kind of like understanding the mechanisms of power and how they exercise it, like how the money is spent is a really big show of where priorities lie. Paying attention to that kind of thing. The rhetoric is important too. Like I do expose myself to Jason Kenney press conferences and the government of Alberta's communications apparatus. For like I keep track of them. That's part of the job, is keeping track of Alberta politics and Alberta rich and powerful folks. And so I don't know. It is how do you decide is the question, right? It's just it's driven by a news approach, right? Like what should the most amount of people know about? What is the most important thing that the most amount of people should know about? And going from there, yeah, like we have a regular schedule. We have the newsletter, we have the podcast, but we do produce feature content from time to time. And those projects are really where we get to do a little bit more digging and have the resources to actually like take some time to gather some facts, interview some people, like do that kind of legwork, fill out the story, and not just kind of do like summary stuff. Those are the most fun stories, and the stories I recommend you kind of judge Progress Alberta and the Progress Report on, and get that baseline of regular podcast and email content, but then the features are where we get to stretch our legs. And it's fun. Like, what was the last one? Is there one you want to talk about? Like, is there one that jumped out at you? Like, I really enjoy and think it's very emblematic, the Brett Wilson piece, and to come back to it. Like, this is a person that perfectly exemplifies like asshole entitled corporate Calgary bullshit, right? And that is such a key part of Alberta's identity and like where it gets its politics from, and why we would end up with someone like Jason Kenney and the rotten state of affairs we have in this fucking province. Yeah, it's because of these like too clever by half, like fucking idiots.
Well, I think Wilson is also emblematic of this Alberta conservative mentality that Trudeau is persecuting our oil and gas industry. He's trying to stymie it with a carbon tax that oil and gas companies don't care about because they just pass it on to consumers. But also, I'll take your money to clean up my orphan wells.
And and his companies have pulled in a bunch of Qs and a bunch of other federal money. Like, the oil and gas industry is quite well supported by the government of Alberta and the government of Canada, and to think otherwise is hilarious. This guy made a fortune because he apparently was like sociable and could throw a good party, and he was able to just like leverage that into this career as an investment banker for fucking oil and gas companies in Canada and Alberta. And he's just a tremendously rotten Twitter presence, and just a like corrosive person on Alberta's body politic. He has so much money. He has a ton. He's able to command the attention of a ton of media kind of whenever he wants. This is a guy who, like, what did he do? He did a news hit for like with Chandro and the UCP, because like they were opening some kind of cancer wing, and like and then he revealed to the world at this thing that like his cancer had come back and he was getting it treated.
Oh,
Like,
how unfortunate.
yeah. Well, I mean, yes, I don't want someone like Brett Wilson to die of cancer, but like to reveal it at a UCP fucking presser with
That rules though.
Chandro.
You gotta respect that like commitment to the act, you know. But speaking of Tyler Chandro, I wanted to, because we're sort of nearing the end here, I wanted to talk a bit more in depth about your Senate run. You recently received an endorsement from Alberta's very competent, very well-respected health minister.
Oh, do you have the clip or no?
Oh,
please insert it here.
I should have, but
We
tell
are
us about it.
not that advanced. All of a sudden, we just can pull up this clip. That's not this show.
Well, you can insert it in post. Put that on Mo's plate.
Yeah, we'll put in the show notes because it's delicious. But tell us about it, Duncan.
Oh, I don't even. It was a press conference I called into. It was like about some silly EMS thing, some non-announcement. And I got through on the phones, which I've never gotten through to Chandro or Kenny on a presser until now. Oh, never for Kenny. That's the first one for Chandro. And asked him some question, but he like, when I asked him the question, he was like, he called me a senator, but he didn't say Senate candidate. It was very funny.
Yeah. As for the question from the senator, I mean Senate candidate, which
it's just general bewilderment. I believe it was like, this isn't a thing. Like, this is a non-announcement. You announce this. Like, this is not a substantial change from how things work. It's a very minor procedural back end thing you're doing here. And like, that was the question. Because that's what the EMS people were telling me. They were texting me and like, I can already drive my ambulance to the place where this is, where this press conference is being held. Like, the presser was like, it was like some continuing care facility, and it's like, now you can drive your ambulance to these facilities if they need it, instead of to a hospital and then there. And it's like, yeah, who cares? But the exchange was very funny. And Chandro, I mean, yes, very honored to get an endorsement from such an august and esteemed person, someone who has led the Ministry of Health with the sterling aplomb and is due all of the praise.
I actually worry for you now that he has endorsed you, because you know he is such an incompetent fool currently, as always. That you know maybe people won't vote for you just because of that. That Chandro likes you. But
maybe that's what he was trying to do. Maybe it was like 3D chess.
Sabotage.
Yeah.
Sabotaging. My favorite part of your campaign though is the slogan or the button that you have, the what is it, fuck Kenny, vote Kinney. I think that one's fantastic, because it really does. It's like the point of this is to show how ridiculous this place is, and in particular how bad Jason Kenney is currently. So I applaud that one.
Well, now that we have someone from Lower Canada on the podcast, maybe we should talk about like how do Alberta Senate elections work? Because of course the Senate is famously an institution that is composed of patronage appointments. So why do we have elections, and what purpose do they serve?
And am I the Lower Canada person? Are you referring to me, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
are you our Laurentian?
Let me explain it to you there, Quebecer.
Yeah, Duncan, explain, because I totally don't get this. We actually talked about this on my show, Harbinger Society, a couple months ago, and you did explain, but I totally forgot. There's been so much going on. So what's the deal? How come the province of Alberta elects senators? Can you tell us more about that?
It's a charming tradition from the near past, with initiated by the dear folks with the Reform Party of Canada. And it was their idea. They campaigned on, Triple E Senate and talked about, the West wants in, and this was part of their campaign rhetoric and stuff. And Senate reform was on it. They wanted to be effective, elected, and equal. And so they were able to kind of pressure both Don Getty into having one, and then in Brian Mulroney eventually into appointing the winner. and that's how they were born. This senatorian. It's just this kind of cynical political ploy, right? Where
Well,
you're just able to be mad at Ottawa.
Well, it's also, I think, a reflection of the attempted Americanization of our politics by these Western Canadian yahoos. Right, that we would have an elected Senate where every province gets an equal amount of senators, regardless of size. And I mean, effective is a bit subjective, but so with that in mind, this is obviously a farce, as I said off the top. Why are you participating in this farce? Like,
well, it's even fun. I like to. I mean, it's obviously a farce. Fuck Kenny. It's a protest vote. But like the history of these silly, stupid Senate elections is very fucked up too, right? Like the very first guy to win a Senate election and to be a senator who was elected, was this Reform Party old head whose name doesn't matter, but he was a supporter. It was their big foreign policy guy, and he was a supporter of apartheid South Africa, and was just a rotten person. And he died of brain cancer.
Is this Lynn Bayek? I mean, I feel like we've done this all the time.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. The Senate. Yeah. The Senate is full of these just absolutely terrible human beings, as we have seen over the years. But what was his name? Stan Waters. Stan Waters, I think, was his name.
No, so you're thinking Stan Rogers, the folk musician who died while he was a senator. I think that's right.
You're almost there. Yeah.
Duncan, you had a great conversation with an actual senator, an actual Canadian senator. I think her name's Paula Simons, a former journalist at the Edmonton Journal, a proud member of the Post Media family. And but she's pretty good as far as senators are concerned and as far as mainstream journalists are concerned. And you had a really interesting conversation where you definitely pushed back a bit against the Senate. What did she have to say about that? And like, how did that conversation go?
Yeah, I mean,
this is on your show, The Progress Report. Sorry.
Yes, it's great. Subscribe today. I host The Progress Report. She pushed back. I mean, she was trying to make a positive case for the Senate, which you would hope someone who is getting paid $250,000 a year or whatever to work for the Senate would do if given the opportunity. I am not entirely convinced by her argument that the Trudeau reforms have made the Senate something that is like worth saving. Like, just zero it out. Zero it out to $1. Like, you don't need to have it. You can just be like, the Senate could be one meeting every year, and like that could be it if you wanted it to be. Where we just like ceremonially pass everything all at once, just becomes like a mace ceremony.
But like, Duncan,
I was just going to say, I find this all really fascinating because, there's so much to discuss around Canadian politics and what works and what doesn't work in our system. And by far, most of it doesn't really work. The parliamentary system is kind of problematic. It's people don't want the connection to the monarchy and the Queen anymore. There's discussion about the Governor General and the role of that office, the role of the Senate, which is equivalent to the House of Lords in Britain. This, as Jeremy said early on, this patronage kind of appointment for fancy rich people, and it's a lifetime appointment. Like, this is crazy that we do these kinds of things, but how do we change all of that? And so I find it fascinating that Duncan, you're using this approach to kind of question and challenge the legitimacy of this institution that, I can lecture all day about how the Senate is wacko and, does all these weird things and what's the point. But you're doing it in such a way that I think really brings a lot of awareness to, as you said earlier, the real farcical nature of this. Like, it's satire basically in real life,
But
go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh, but like, just like, what made you decide that you were going to do this? Because I would imagine it's, even though it's a joke of election, even though you're taking it as seriously as it warrants, which is not at all. Like, there is still some, paper to fill out and some degree of effort on your part. What made you decide to like?
I had to get 500 signatures in order to be 500 nomination signatures in order to get on the ballot, which is not an insignificant amount of signatures, to be honest. Like, it's like 25 for a councillor. It's like 100 for an MP. this is like 5 MPs worth of signatures, nomination signatures you've got to collect. Maybe just to keep out the riffraff. But I mean, I did get to think about that question, like when I was like talking to strangers that I had never met before, being like, hey, I'm running for this Senate election and it's fake, but you should vote for me just to piss off Jason Kenney. Like that sentence had like a 98% hit rate, like when I was going to protests, when I was knocking on doors that had any kind of sign whatsoever, like in order to get the signatures, I would go to protests and I would knock on doors like in my neighborhood or in the neighborhood one over that had that. I don't know if you don't live in Alberta right now, Andre, actually I'll explain it to you, but like these coroplast signs for a variety of causes, like the unions have started handing them out, the like nonprofits have them, they're on various things: coal, healthcare, education, curriculum, blah blah blah.
Yeah, Defend Alberta Parks is
there's been a couple of big ones that lots of people have had, and so you just knock on any of those households and you say, hey, my name is Duncan Kinney, you don't know me, but I'm running for the Senate. And look, I'll be brief. The Senate elections are fake. We don't elect senators in this country. But if you vote for me, it will piss Jason Kenney off.
Well, it's amazing that you can identify potential like voters or supporters, but it also, like, I lived in Alberta for 9 years in the late aughts, the late 90s, from 1992 to 2000.
During the boom.
But the culture was so different. Like left culture was completely non-existent. Roberta, you know what I'm talking about. You might have been at the World Petroleum Congress protests in Calgary in 2000 as well. But like it was a nightmare zone. Oh, sorry, Duncan, you're my age too, practically. So like we're the same generational cohort. But
you also look alike.
Well, so do you. Thank you.
I mean, so do I. We're all bald.
Yeah, I was gonna say Roberta's been very.
I can't
patient.
tell any of you apart, so
Right,
I don't
Roberta's
know
just
who
like,
I'm talking to.
3 men's voices with bald.
This is just Elaine
I'm
Paul's
glad
meme,
your
but with
names are there.
2 other dudes.
But what I want to say is we kind of begin to wrap up because we got to transition to my panel in the next few minutes. Is that it's been so cool, like with this community we've been building with Harbinger and with the work all you guys do, with Alberta Advantage and with Forgotten Corner, with Sweater Weather and with the Progress Report. Like it's amazing. I love that there's this sort of alternative space to have these conversations, to sort of like shift the discourse. And it's not nothing at all. It's like, it's actually really awesome. And Duncan, your campaign is another piece of that, which I love. So let's begin to wrap up. I'm sorry to totally hijack, Jeremy, your hosting duties, especially when you're in a suit, a power suit. I'm kind of intimidated. Do you want to kind of just do the sort of pitching to where people can find you on social media and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate place to do this. Duncan, as our illustrious guest, why don't you go first?
Yeah, my pluggables are kinneyforsenate.ca. Take the vote pledge, and then you'll get a little notification on E-Day to go vote for me. The election is October 18th in Alberta, alongside your municipal elections as well as the referendums. Tell your friends. It's a fun, easy, stupid way, and totally like won't actually do anything, but is very funny to vote in these Senate elections and vote for me. So there you go. And also join the Progress Report as well. Get on the mailing list.
I was just going to add one final plug for voting in that election also, because we should be very conscious of the fact that the Conservatives have purposefully put on some big referenda on these ballots to get their base out voting. And so, municipal elections are incredibly important. The people who end up running the city can really influence what's happening, I think, as we're seeing now. And so vote for Duncan in this ridiculously useless election. But at the same time, make sure you vote for, if you're a voter, for the issues that are important in the municipal elections as well. And don't let the Conservatives use this tactic to win. That's, I guess, my feeling about the municipal elections and the ballots.
Yeah, because municipal elections, I mean, they do have a material impact on your day-to-day life in a way that provincial and federal elections don't. So yeah, vote for your most progressive candidate.
And Roberta, and if I may, people also are definitely going to want to follow all of you guys on Twitter at Duncan Kinney, at Lexier, at Jeremy Appel 1025, I think, at Foco Pod or Faux Corn.
For corn.
for Corn Pod, and with your absent host at Schmitzy Says. He's a great follow. So yeah, people definitely want to follow you guys. I am just totally going to hijack this and wrap it up. I'm so sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I started Substack recently. If you like my journalism, it's Appel Orchard. That's APPEL orchard.substack.com. Give it a read. If you like it, subscribe. It's free.
And Jeremy,
you can also give
hit that again at when you guys come back for Big Shiny Takes.
Yeah,
for
for
folks,
sure.
Jeremy will be back ASAP, just in a couple hours actually, and that's gonna be wonderful. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, you guys, this was awesome. I'm going to take over. Bye, Duncan. He's gone. Jeremy, I'll see you later. Roberta, thank you so much. Roberta Lexier, member of the Harbinger Board of Directors. You guys, that was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing this and letting me be a Twitch person for a day. And Andre, keep up the good work at Harbinger, and I hope the day goes well. And everybody else out there, give money to Harbinger. We need it, and we're building this fantastic left network. So do what you got to do.
Yeah, great to be here, Andre.
Okay, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
So folks, I'm coming on in a panel in just a few minutes with some exciting guests. Jen Hassam was recently placed in the position of Executive Director of the Broadbent Institute. She's going to be joining me with Gabrielle Brassard-Lecour from Ricochet French. We're going to be talking about a new left media initiative that they're part of launching, which is really exciting. I want to remind you too you got to donate. You got to hit that donate button. Harbinger is a nonprofit that it has no dark money, no corporate influence. It's all supported by people like you, by listeners like you, and people watching this Twitch stream right now. The money kind of goes into just keeping this afloat, keeping it in the black. I run everything as the executive director, and just trying to kind of keep a community across the country of like-minded, ideologically similar leftists, socialists, and progressives. Just sort of, having a community, and it's super exciting. So I'm looking forward to coming back and doing my panel in about 10 minutes. But first, I'm super excited because one of the shows on the network, Work It, is basically like the only anti-capitalism sketch comedy show that I know of, and they rule. They do great stuff. So Sam Alamang and Janet Mowat were kind enough to produce a 10-minute video for Harbinger. I urge you to kick back, enjoy this rather unsettling yet funny video, and don't forget to donate if you can. Really appreciate it. So without more ado, here it is. I'll be back with Jen Hassam and Gabrielle in just about 10 minutes. Nahum, can you play that video, please?
At HQ, all around the world, it's time to make some real money. Work It Music begins its broadcasting day. Here are your beloved sexy hosts, Sam and Janet.
What's up, everyone? I'm Janet from Work It.
And I'm Sam from Work It, or I was. Now I'm fabulous neon-tinted 80s VJ, Sammy Miami.
Cool, Sam. Hey, remember Much Music? Remember how cool it was? Well, welcome to Work It Music.
A network for geriatric millennials who still want to rock and be beautiful, my lovelies.
He's 40. We are so stoked to be part of this telethon.
We're big fans of Hamburglar Media, and we're even bigger fans of making money. Hey, now that's a gnarly idea. Why not send us your money?
But don't forget the fundraising incentives, Sam.
Please, Sammy Miami.
Oh, cram it, Miami suck machine. Folks, if we reach $400, we'll tear down not one, but 2 statues of John A. MacDonald.
And then we'll make them kiss and hump like Barbie dolls.
At $650K, the Big Shiny Takes gang will be forced to read Rex Murphy editorials until their eyes catch fire. Whoa, you don't want to miss that.
And at, however much our fundraising goal is, Harbinger gets to continue existing.
Righteous. Now, folks, we know that you've all been thinking, this is a telethon. Where's the star-studded sing-along?
Yeah, where's Bob Suck